So now is it Cavallero?
Cavallero.
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 Right.
Or Caballero in Spanish.
Yes. Now, is that a Spanish name or not?
Well, I'd say I don't have to spend money to know where I come from, and it's not from a royal family, not at all. Caballero, people come from Spain, but we're the servants, people cleaning up horses. So that's why I'm invited to the King's event next week.
But you know how to ride a horse, do you?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
The Argentinian way, anyway, not the English one.
Okay. And you prefer Ricky or Ricardo?
Ricky.
Ricky Cavallero is a senior, well-traveled publishing executive. We're meeting in Milan. Welcome to the Bibliophile.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning.
Now, I'm relying on the internet, but here's what I just found. First of all, you had a childhood in Libya, is that right?
Yes, as a kid I grew up in Libya in the 70s. So it's Libya with Gaddafi. We moved there when I was 7 years old until I was 11. And it's been one of the happiest times of my life.
And why was that?
It was because we lived like little animals. We were able to go with our bikes everywhere. At that time, Libya had 2 million inhabitants. We lived in Benghazi. And so I was outside playing all day long. We had no TV, no movie theaters, no nothing, no telephone. So we had a lot of books, and that's how I started reading. Because it was the only thing you could do was reading. So I read a lot at that time.
Your father was a big reader?
Yes, definitely. It was my father and my mother. They were big readers, and twice a year we used to travel to Italy and go to, say, the biggest bookshop at the time in Milan. It was the Oepli bookshop.
I just interviewed Barbara Oepli.
Barbara, younger than me. She wasn't there at that time. She wasn't born.
Okay.
And we bought boxes and boxes of books and sent them to Benghazi, and so.
And what were you reading primarily?
Hemingway I read all his books from 8 to 11, and I loved it. It really changed the way I watched things.
Yeah.
And a few years ago, I went back rereading it, and I was somehow disappointed. I mean, it's still Hemingway, but I'm a different guy. I mean, I'm 60 years old. I was 80 years old at that time.
Yeah.
So at that time was like discovering a new word, and so I learned the English I know. I learned it from those books. Nowadays, it's still Hemingway, but I'm a different guy, and that happens sometimes when you reread books at a different age of your life.
Yeah, we were just saying, I found that with Gabriel Garcia Marquez and 100 Years of Solitude. And speaking of Marquez, I wanted to bring this up. Years ago, I was in Antigua on the beach, and there was a couple quite nearby. And I noticed that he was reading the same book that I was reading. And it's that short book that he wrote about whores, prostitutes.
Oh, yeah. I published it in Spain and Latin America.
Right. So I came up to him, and he was Italian. He's Italian. He's from Ischia, the island of Ischia. And so we hit it off on that front, and then I examined the cover. And on the North American cover, there's no nipple on the woman's breast. But in the Italian, of course there is. So I just wonder, I mean, you're talking about, it's so prudish, but you're talking about different markets. So how would you market something like that in Italy versus Spain, let's say?
Well, different tastes, I believe, different cultures, and nipples seems, and other things, seems not to be a problem for us in Italy, and that's because it's a Catholic country, so we can always say we're sorry, we made a mistake. So I think that's never been a problem here. I mean, while in the States, I mean, think about when the bikini was launched back in the 60s in California, and you go to a beach in Italy and you find people, ladies without their bra, and it's quite normal and nobody notices it. You do that in an English island, and you're gonna be fined.
The police will be on you.
Yeah, but then we're much more, how can I say, short-minded than other things. that affects much more. So it's good to have women to be able to do what they want, but on the other side, I think we have still have to improve something on civil rights and democracy. So I'd rather prefer to have more, to see more bras on the beach and more respect for civil rights in everyday life. So
Yes.
it's always a balance you have to find. But anyway, I mean, in publishing, it's important. It's not only just a matter of the jacket. It's also a matter of the success of the book. I mean, when I spent 10 years in charge of Spanish markets, so Latin America, from Mexico to Argentina, and the fusion we European do, an idea at the beginning was, okay, that's Latin America.
Yeah.
Well, that's a continent, and so Mexico is very different from Colombia, Venezuela, not even thinking about Argentina or Chile, and the language is different. I would say Colombia, it's the country where they still keep the very old Spanish, so it's the clean Spanish. There are a lot of false friends between Mexico and Argentina, so you call things with different names.
So that means you have to publish them in slightly different.
If you're publishing genre, normally you do Spanish translation and you export it everywhere. But if you're talking about literature, then you have to be very careful because, again, at the very beginning when I moved to Spain back in 1997, the habit was to print a book, sell it in Spain, and then send the returns to Latin America, which is quite offensive because behind that there is the assumption that it's a second-tier country. You're going to read our returns.
Well, and what about the language itself? There isn't a problem then doing a Spanish edition and then sending that exact same edition over to...
No, we were doing that in some changes for Garcia Marquez, for other authors. You adapt that.
For each country?
For each geographical... It was funny because at that time we were also publishing atlases, and you can really mess up things if you have to show the borders of Patagonia, because as of today, well, at that time, the border of Patagonia was different from an Argentinian perspective or a Chilean perspective. So there is an area of nobody in the middle, but Chile believes that's Chilean Patagonia, and Argentinian says, no, that's our Patagonia. So we have to print two different atlases for the countries. It messes up with warehouse.
Right. Otherwise, what, you're going to get a revolt, or you're not going to get you're going to get a bestseller in one country and zero sales in the other.
That's a bit crazy. It turned out to be even more crazy in Spain. I mean, the last 20 years, when nationalism really grew up. Mm-hmm. For instance, for textbooks, if you do an exercise from math exercise in the book, okay, so you have to use Pedro is moving from his town to the mountain. Those are the miles. How long will it take to an average speed of X? And so you always have to use the mountain and the capital of the region, which is crazy.
Well, especially Catalonia, I get that.
That's how much.
So you would have editors who would make these tiny little changes throughout the books?
We had in Spain, Spanish house publishing was in charge of everything. So let's say all the other countries were somehow branch offices, commercial offices. And we decided that was wrong. And so we hired editors in all the countries, and our editorial plans were very different from country to country. We had some things like Garcia Marquez, Futsi or Pamuk were published all over the world. But we were publishing a lot of local authors that had good market, for instance, in Argentina with Sudamericana, and we were not promoting them in Spain because publishing, I think, in the end, it's a very regional market. There's not a great advantage in having companies all around the world. I mean, and I was working, and that was the philosophy that Random House had at that time. I mean, I'm talking the biggest publisher on earth, as we're talking now today. But nevertheless, I think the brilliant thing they've done through the decades, not years, is that they keep every single country run as an independent country, and I think that's one of the keys of their success.
That's interesting because, well, in the last few years, I've interviewed James Daunt with Waterstones and Barnes and Noble, and this is the same sort of idea. He's allowing each store to react to the local market.
That's correct.
And this is part of the reason for his success. So I can see that happening, but with publishing houses, I see all of these different little houses within the big house, trying to reestablish Allen Lane, for example, as his own little house. That strikes me as kind of, it's just window dressing. As opposed to doing something like you're saying, where you do have local people corresponding and responding to the local market. But coming up with all of these different little houses within the great big house, what's the purpose of that?
I think there is a way you do it, and it depends on the philosophy of the publishing house. I mean, so at that time in Random, and I think today they're a little confused. I believe they have to define who runs the company. So the last 3 months,
because sales have been going
messy up there.
Yeah. Well, the way that they have been growing over the last decade is just by acquiring other companies as opposed to building the market. Would you say that's accurate?
They're already big enough, so they had to buy their market shares.
Yeah.
Somehow also driven by the Amazon effect. I mean, if you have to deal with such a big retailer, you have to be as big as you can. It's a very tough life out there. So launching an imprint, an independent imprint somehow into a conglomerate. That's the way you do it. I mean, if you believe it can work and you let them leave and do what they want on their own, which not only means you let them publish the book they want to.
Yes.
But you also have to leave them somehow free to define their commercial conditions. So the way they get to retailers, they can decide, I don't want to go with Amazon, I just want to go with independent retailers. So things gets a little bit more confused because our structure is very difficult to, the kind of freedom you can have, it's tricky.
Yeah. So. I mean, part of it's lovely. Part of it is, bringing back to life some of these great names, these publishing names in these smaller entities.
That's what I've seen in 6 years, and it's my experience in Italy. You could ask, so if you want to launch an imprint, why don't you launch your own company?
Right.
What I want is the catalog. If you're running a company that only publishes new titles, even if you have a lucky year, you're never sure you're going to survive next year. In the market we have now, with very little differences between one country and the other, it's very difficult. It's to assure a long perspective to your company if you're not somehow linked to someone who has paperback. And if you only have paperback and you have a commercial agreement with a paperback, if you only have new titles and you have a commercial agreement with someone who has paperback, there's no money coming out of it. You get 5% royalty, 6% if you're lucky, you share it, 60% with the author. At the end of the day, you've done a good job, but there's no cash flow for the company, and at the end of the year, publishing it's a matter of cash flow. As we all know.
Well, yes, and it's a matter of hitting one big one. I mean, it's so many titles. 90% of the titles, the sales aren't terrific. You're relying on.
But even when you have a big title, everybody hits a big title once in a lifetime. It's a statistic. The point is, what you can do after that big title. Most of the time, it's very difficult to build something on that big title. So those, what we call the gray titles, the one that sells in between, in the middle.
But they're the ones you really want to publish. You really want them to be in the world, right?
Yeah, from let's say managerial perspective, that's what you want to do. Then what every publisher wants to find is the big title. It's like drugs.
It's like
a wonderful trip.
Right. Well, plus it's immortality to some extent.
It's immortality. It's fun. Basically, it's a lot of fun.
Well, tell me about that fun then. Like, tell me.
Oh well, fun could be different. It's not only a matter of sales. I mean, I'm two different experiences. Man, on one side, the Nobel Prize, Orhan Pamuk.
Yeah. So how did that work? Did you establish an early relationship with him?
Before for the Nobel Prize, yes, but it was already published. I mean, it was published by Havana, which was a different company.
So what did you do specifically?
We loved the daughter. I loved the daughter, and Claudio Lopez Lamadrid was the publisher. We thought that it wasn't well published in Spain. And,
What does that mean? It's not well published.
it was not selling enough. Sales were very low. No promotion on the author. And the first thing we did when we bought it, we were lucky because whenever you have an author, big author, where you invest money, every year your financial director will come back to you and say, advance that is not covered by sales. January or February at the beginning of the year, and they will come in your office with a list of authors. This is shitty author. We're not going to renew this contract. And that's the week when you define whether you're a publisher. Because most of the time you have to say, okay, this is not selling, we're losing money, doesn't matter. And so we want
That's the publisher, of course. That's
the
because
publisher,
I'm
of
not
course.
going to be doing this unless he's published.
It depends on your taste, on what you want to do. And I'm not talking only about literature. I mean, that was with Pamuk. We published it for many years, losing money. And then 1 month before I got, or 2 months before I got the Nobel Prize, we organized a trip to Istanbul when I published Istanbul, and with 30 booksellers, independent booksellers from Spain. And we were honored by having Orhan Pamuk, who was Mr. Nobody at that time, as a tour guide in Istanbul for 3 days with us day and night, and was wonderful.
Yeah.
And a month later, it was the Nobel Prize of the Year, and we established a very close relationship. And in 3 months, all the write-offs of the previous
Disappeared.
5 years
Yes.
were covered, and that's the fun. The other fun I had in a total different direction was I used to go to New York at least.
Well, you worked there for 3
I went there. I mean, since I was supposed to arrive in New York on September the 12th, 2001. Of course, I had to delay my arrival 2 weeks later until 2003. So for 2 years. And even when I came back to Italy, I had the habit to travel to New York at least 3-4 times a year. So I was there for a tour at the very beginning of ebooks, and I had a aperitif with Sonny Mehta, close friend of mine, and I told him, listen, I was in Barnes and Nobles, and on my e-reader just popped up an awful jacket, and the book is not available there. And I've looked through eBay. It's an Australian paperback that's selling for $450. It's crazy. I said, oh yeah, we just bought it. We just bought it yesterday, and was 50 Shades of Grey. I'm talking about Sonny Mehta and 50 Shades of Grey. So
That's
something.
extraordinary. Yeah. You started off as self-published.
Yeah.
And so what happened? He read
These
it.
people, I think,
He said, it's terrible. I read
Doubleday.
it.
So the Doubleday editors bought it. So I made a phone call to, it was midnight, and called, ever heard about this book, that book? And the answer was, of course, when we rejected it twice.
That's
It
titillation.
was marketing.
It's S&M titillation.
Yeah. I said, okay, just make an offer right now, please. I'm going to buy it. We offered 50,000 euro. They sold it for 90,000 euro. And we sold 2.5 million copies in 6 months when we published it. And so that's another kind of, so Pamuk on one side and 50 Shades of Grey the other.
But you know what that says is there's different, you've got an eye for really good literature, and you've got an eye for something that's going to sell. The skill then of an editor is to be able to say, yes, this is going to move a lot of units, and yes, this is something that's worth putting out into the world, even if it doesn't sell.
If you have more than one kid, you have to define exactly what they can do. I mean, one of your kids is going to be a Nobel Prize in something, and the other one could be a very great salesman in the car dealer. New books is more or less the same. I mean, they are all the same. They look the same, but they talk to different kind of people. So, of course, when you have what we call a literary book and you sell it in huge numbers, you're happier than ever.
Well, that's the thing. That's the pinnacle. Plus, with that, you're making money that enables you to do the stuff that you think is important.
So we always get back to cash flow, inevitably.
Right. Okay, so you have talked about the importance of a clear editorial line.
Yeah.
Can you just describe what you're talking about?
It's people that buy books, that invest their money in buying your books, must believe in what you're doing.
But most people don't even notice which publishing house it is, do they?
I'm not so sure. I mean, of course, if you're publishing misnames, famous authors, they buy the author.
Right.
So they buy the title or they're impressed by the jacket. And the jacket is, again, a part of the editorial line you're following.
Yes.
So we're getting back to that. But you have to be very firm in defining what you want to do and what you can't do. Otherwise, you start running behind anything, and you want to publish everything, and it's going to be a disaster. Right. So be firm.
But firm on, like, for example, you in 2015, you set up your...
Yeah, and when we decided...
So what was your firm, clear line on that one?
Genre, thrillers and that kind of stuff. Publishing 35 titles a year, so find something, a new voice, and... luckily enough, we bought Richard Osman before it was published in the UK. It turned out to be a huge success. I think he sold 2 million copies with his first book in hardcover in the UK, which is something extraordinary.
And you got him before that?
Yeah.
So how did you find him?
Again, working with very good people. That's key.
Yeah. But what about those good people? What makes them good?
They're, when you publish, you're like a dog. You go hunting and you have to smell things. Lucky, smart, a mixture of the two things.
And you've just sold to, or a complete...
Frassinelli.
Yeah. So now what are you going to do?
I'm going to read a lot. Not only things that I want to publish, things that I want to read.
Right.
There's a lot of books that I was in love with that I couldn't publish because of many different reasons. And so now I can do what I want to do, at least for a few months. Then let's see what will happen.
What about the difference then between you know Spain, you know New York, you know Milan. So tell me a bit about the difference in just the whole life of being a publisher in these different places.
I've been very lucky, as you say, because I've been working in different markets. Publishing is, as I said before, I believe it's a very regional business. So
yes. Why is it regional business?
It's a matter of taste. It's like with food. I mean, you can have spaghetti in New York, but if you're Italian, you will definitely not have spaghetti in New York. That's not the spaghetti you have. So taste changes from country to country, with the exception of the young markets. I mean, young adults.
Yeah.
Which more or less the same all around the world.
The thing is, if it gets to a certain point, if it's successful here in Italy, then obviously you're going to try and sell the rights to it or in the English-speaking world. I mean, that makes...
With few exceptions, I would say, Umberto Eco, Valerio Massimo Manfredi, I would say no more than 10 authors have been in the world. There are different reasons. One is... well, for sure, the cost of translation, but that's just a little explanation. In publishers in the English market, you have so many authors that most of the times you don't have to look outside.
Yeah.
On the other side, when I was in Spain, I was translating authors from France or Dutch authors or English authors. As a publisher, we always got part of the money for the translation from the governments, which is something in Italy there's no support.
No support.
To export, no. Spain, from that perspective, did a very good job, starting 30 years ago with the Instituto Cervantes. They understood that culture is an industry, and they used it to attract tourists to the country. So the more you export your culture, I'm sure that Garcia Marquez, Vargas Llosa, Isabel Allende should get a medal from the tourist office because they attracted people. Because when you read Garcia Marquez, then you want to go visit Cartagena, which is worth a visit, definitely a long one. Go to Spain, you love that culture, you end up.
Yeah, well, look at Ferrante.
Every day. Ferrante, it's a very good example. Ferrante, everybody's in love with Ferrante. It took more than 12 years to build Ferrante. So you need to have a part. That's not like 50 Shades of Grey, where you have dinner with Sonny Meda, he buys it, you say, okay, just buy it. You buy it overnight, and 3 months later, the book explodes.
Yeah.
No, Ferrante, you have to be very strong.
Yeah.
And you start publishing a book that sells 2,000 copies, and then the second one sells a little less, and it takes 12 years to get.
That's faith.
I would say
that's faith.
Ferrante wasn't built in a day. Let me say that. That's the other part of the fun. I mean, be strong.
Well, you need to be strong in the face of these bean counters that say, look, you're not earning your...
It's easier when you're running a small company because you're also in charge of finance. So it's your money. It's your money. You have to invest and lose money for a few years. After 12 years, you have a jewel. It's been a great TV production, a theater production in London. She was for a short time a columnist on The Guardian. And nobody knows who she is. She never shows up.
Yeah.
He, they.
Them. Okay, so it's the local business.
It's a very local business, but then the way people act is the same in Argentina or in New York. Men, booksellers, publishers, authors. It's one community worldwide. People act the same way all around, man.
What do you mean?
Publishers will always complain about the fact that their books are not well distributed. Booksellers will always complain that there is an exaggeration in production, too many books, you should produce less books, and blah, 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 blah. They will always hate commercial fiction. And that's the same, doesn't matter whether you're in New York, in Lima, or in Bogota, or Barcelona, or Milano. Those things are the same. There are different technicalities, of course, depending whether you're in market with Act or
which you have here.
We have here since 2011, and
Ricky Levy,
yeah.
So
It's called the Levy Law. Okay. And on the other things that makes the difference is books are owned by the publisher, not by the bookseller. He put the books there, and when he sells them, he hopefully will get back the publisher.
But the literacy rate isn't so great, is it?
No, it's very low.
Yeah.
It's just above Greece, around 6%. It improved right now, but it's like, I think it's 93% in France, 85% in the UK, so we're down to 60 or...
It's extraordinary. It's hard to believe.
No, but again, think about what I said before about the guy that said, you don't eat with books. Books will never give you food for the table.
No.
So a book is something which is not important in our culture. It has never been important. I don't know, perhaps because we're Catholics.
No, but the thing is, it is important because you've introduced that fixed price that protects booksellers.
But that was to protect the booksellers, the independent booksellers, and it was well done.
So it tells me the government thinks that books are important enough to do this.
We have to also understand that Italy is a very, I would say, unique market. I think this is the only country where you have the biggest four publishers that control the retail chain. It doesn't matter. That doesn't happen in North America. It doesn't happen in Latin America. It doesn't happen in the UK. Not in France. So there is this, I would say, unfair competition. Especially, I think this year, 2023, will be a very tough year. Because since the market is shrinking, companies are financially driven, I would say, right now. And so, first reaction when you're running through, you say, okay, so we have the publishing house, we have the retailers, and so if I sell more books of my publishing house in my retail, in my bookshops, I will double the margin. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'll make more money on my
It's
own, selling my own books.
It's unfair
Yeah.
competition,
Well,
of course.
that was one of the reasons they brought that in.
Yeah, it was one of the reasons they brought that in, but it was not enough.
So again, the concern is that you're restricting the number of titles that Italians can read, and that's not good.
They call bibliodiversity. It's a mess. I think it's a at the end of the day, it's a stupid thing to be done because you will end up. I mean, there might be people that want to buy a Rolex and they will go to a Rolex shop. Most of the people on Earth want to buy a watch and they will go to a shop that shows all the watches you have instead of buying it. Or it will end up going to e-commerce because there I can find everything. On the other side, I mean, this, which I consider is a stupid thing to do, I mean, to use your bookshop chain to sell only the books of your publishing house. I mean, they will never do that, but you can do it in a soft way, soft way. If you decide that even if you have 200 bookshops in Italy, and you will only buy 200 copies of a new title of an independent publisher, it's one of the problems. On the other side, because of what we learned with COVID, they have a great opportunity this year because they have direct contact with their customers and they can show they cannot compete with the bookshop, with a chain, because they have 20,000 titles in the shop. So if you're an independent book publisher, bookseller, you're somehow like an independent publisher. You have to define exactly what you want to sell. Of course, you will have 3-4 top bestsellers that people will ask you for, but those titles, they can find them in a chain shop, on Amazon. Of course, they're available everywhere. You don't need to go to a local one, to your proximity bookshop. You go to a proximity bookshop because you have a different service. You have something that knows your taste. You have someone that knows the books and can propose something to you.
Yeah.
Someone you trust. So,
someone, who's well read and smart and a friend, hopefully.
Yeah. And I think that was disappearing before COVID, and perhaps it's one of the few good things COVID brought us in the last 3 years. Now you have to work, you have to do things, you have to be smart, of course. Yeah. It's small business.
Yeah, there's so many of the Italian booksellers. It's just like a 1 or 2 person operation. So many of them, right?
It's also a matter of culture. I mean, it's very difficult to have 2 Italians agree on something.
Right.
Look at politics. Yesterday there were 2 in Renzi and Calenda just split the brand new party that hasn't started yet, but they split it yesterday. So it's in our nature.
Yes. Okay. In your nature, we're winding down slowly here. Travel is in your nature, and it's interesting how you suggest that the publisher needs to get out around the world to understand the world so you can anticipate where the world is going so you can inform your decisions.
Definitely. I think it's not only for publishers, it's for everybody. You have to travel a lot and be open to other cultures, but if you're in publishing, more than ever, you have to travel, to meet people, to see different cultures, because you have to anticipate what's going to happen, and you have to feel it. Of course, I mean, as I said before, I used to travel to New York because that was easy. It was getting in charge of Latin America. That really changed my life. I mean, I had an idea of what Spain was and Latin America was, and I had to change it dramatically when I arrived there.
But what was different?
It was different. People were different. Latin America do not exist. Latin America is, you might have North America, but you don't have Central or Latin America. It's a bunch of different countries, small countries. I mean, with Belize or...
Well, what's different about all these people is they've just got what?
Different history, different economy, different needs, kind of invasion from the Spanish conquistadores.
Right. Whoever conquered us, we're not so keen on them.
It's the same thing in the UK. Fusion between Scottish and English.
Yeah.
It's such a smaller country.
But there's strong, deep yearning to express who they are.
The fact that those people are moving to Europe, it means something is happening down there. And whenever in a country something happens, there is a cultural movement that follows or anticipates it. So as a publisher, we have to go to Africa really.
Right
See
now.
what's happening there, because I'm sure there are new writers coming out. They would be
Because
market
of
searching.
whenever there's change, there's interesting writing.
Yeah. If there is a dictatorship, you will have to look for authors outside the country.
Right.
Because dictatorship kills.
Or they've been exiled.
Yeah. But if there's a revolution going on, it's writing something interesting for sure. Perhaps it's not non-fiction. It's going to be fiction.
So how would you do that? What would you do? You would go down there and you'd look up the Writers Association, or you'd call up a publishing house that you know, or what would you do?
They don't even have publishing houses in it. You just go there and get into bars and people and streets, and you have to smoke and see what happens. Worst case scenario, you had an interesting holiday. Most of the times you find interesting people. Of course, you have contacts, women and knowing writers.
Yeah.
You have contacts. Nowadays it's easier than it was in the past.
To get out there. It's interesting. Our mutual friend Richard Charkin. One of the things that really strikes me about him is that he gets out there. He'll write about his own experience, and he was one of the earliest people who were blogging. He tries out things. He gets out there. He learns what people are doing. He pays attention to that. He listens. If you're talking, you can't listen. Right?
It was always interested in your experience. It was never talking about what he had done, what he was doing. It was always asking questions. I think that's one of the secrets if you're in this job. That will interest other people. But you have to control your ego, because otherwise it's a delirium. It's delirium.
Well, and also you don't listen.
Yeah. If you're a publisher, you definitely have to listen.
People who listen typically have a lot of friends, because people like to talk about themselves. If you're listening to that, they like that. They want to go to you because you listen to them.
It's a social activity.
And this is what you say here. You say that, a publisher is someone who participates in life, who goes to parties, and who has the marks on his or her liver.
I confirm that's one of the nice part of being in publishing.
Yes. Well, and this is how I want to sort of wind this down then. Here I am in Milan. What's the best bar to go to?
Oh. Until 2 months ago, SEM, my publishing house, was one of the best places to go through too, because
you had a bar there?
No, we didn't. No. When we launched our publishing house, it's in a canteen. It's underground. And it's 300 square meters office, open space. It's a very strange office. Everybody loved it. We decided, okay, once a week we're gonna open up the publishing house. So we have a place for events. And we were presenting books, our authors, most of the times, authors from other publishers, as long as the authors, all the publishers were friends. So we decided some.
So they did readings, you mean? Or?
Yeah, readings. We had music, jazz trio, or monologues. Once a week, we call them SEM Thursday night. And we started at 7 with an aperitif for everybody. Then 15 minutes presentation, and then we had dinner for everybody. We stayed there until 1, 2 a.m. And of course, people were leaving, most of the people were leaving at 10, but it was very interesting because people were staying there, talking until late in the morning. We had authors staying there, musicians, and we launched 2 authors from those dinners, and I think that's publishing. It's not only the fact of being closed in a book presentation or signing, which is wonderful, but let's say 8 p.m. the bookseller needs to go back. And we were also selling books, but not directly. We were selling physically the books, but all the numbers went to an independent bookseller that was in the area, some 500 meters from the shop. So that's to me and my wife, the company with me, Teresa. That's publishing. You have to stay with people and to listen. And if you eat and drink in between, that helps.
So you invited everyone for dinner.
Yeah.
You had to have an invitation to come. And you gave out free dinner?
Was free. Yeah. It's free dinner. And I think it was much better than investing in advertising on newspapers. So now we sold the company and we moved to Feltrinelli with a wonderful building. Of course, it's a different perspective. They depend a little more on algorithms and that kind of stuff.
That's
But
wonderful.
people in the street, man, they stopped me, and it was in western part of Milano. The guy in the square, the guy I never met,
Yeah.
I don't remember, just stopped me in the street because he attended on Thursday nights. And we normally had between minimum 50 people, maximum 350. So a lot of people. And that's a lot of wine. The average was around 70 bottles per night. So it's a good investment. So right now we're just refurbishing the place, and we will start again at the end of May. We'll present a book of a friend published by Einaudi, and we will call it in a different way, but we will go on having this kind of meetings once a week. It won't be the same Thursday night, so it will have a different name, of course. We will say, for sure, you ask me, what you want to do? The first thing I will do is, with my wife, we were going to set up a sort of cultural association just to have parties on Thursday.
That's great.
And meet people there. Perhaps we will have some more music this time, more jazz or whatever.
Yeah.
Jazz is good because since we are in a condominium, if you have punk music, people will complain on the on the first floor. We won't be very happy. So jazz is perfect.
Okay, but you still haven't answered my question. A bar, that we can't go to that.
Bar,
I can't go to that.
No, close to the.
Where the publishers hang out.
No, I don't.
You don't hang out?
Well, there is one. No, there is definitely there is a place, and it's a small bookshop. It used to be independent. Now it's part of the chain Ubic, and it's Verso in Corso di Porta di Cinese.
Okay.
And it's an interesting story, very nice story. It was established and founded by small independent publishers, 3 of them, and basically it's a bar with a bookshop. It's a very small one, and it's 2-floor. But it's no more than 100 square meters, 2 different floors.
Okay.
And if you go there at night, they have presentations, they present books.
It's called Verso?
Yeah, bar bookstore. Corso di Porta di Cinese. It's close to La Colonna di San Lorenzo. So it's a place where people will hang out and you drink a glass of wine and you chat, you meet editors, young editors, and publishers. I was there. It's a very nice place.
Just finally then, Barcelona, you were there for so many years. You did the same sort of thing there, did you, or not?
It was lovely. I've been there twice. The first time I was running what was a small company, the Mondadori activities in Spain, Grijalbo, the Grijalbo group. The second time we merged Grijalbo with Bertelsmann activities. So it was a big group. And we were doing the same thing, man. We started with a lot of lunch with authors. It was different because the company was bigger, and yes, we always invested money. And we organized 3 concerts to present the new books of Ken Follett. I think I'm the only guy who organized 4 different concerts of Ken Follett around the world. We had one in Madrid, Barcelona, with one in Positano, and another one in Frankfurt. We were not even talking about books. It was just Ken on stage with his friends playing music. People had fun, and we sold a lot of books.
Is this because you're Italian? Because you're so social and friendly?
Because I love parties.
But that's helping you be successful. That's how you've been successful.
It's the simple why people use Facebook or lunch with others. And so if you do that in a place, in a physical place, and you develop the habit, and you can do it once or twice. But then if people start coming back, then you succeeded. It's much better than putting an ad on a newspaper, on the front page of a newspaper, because if I'm paying for an ad, what can I say? This book is not worth the money I'm asking you. I'm giving a party, and we talk. It's not only my party. I don't want to be that stupid. I love parties, but I love party because in parties you meet people, you talk with people, and you listen a lot at parties, and helps new ideas to come out. And sometimes you find someone that has a good voice. Many different reasons he can't show that voice, and you can offer him a stage to show his voice. And we launched two new authors, and the first one won a literary prize in Italy. Then it was in the finalist for Premio Strega, and now there's another author that attended those parties. And after a year, we asked her, "When you have a very nice point of view, have you ever thought about writing something?" And she said, "Well, I'm writing something." She was just ashamed of showing it. And we read it, said, fine. And when we published it, and it was a success. Well, it was a success for it. 5,000 copies in Italy.
Yeah, you made your money back
new.
plus a little bit.
And she made some money as well. And she has an agent, and she has a second book, and she's performing well. And that's, you know, and I don't want to be rhetoric, but I'm Italian, so I can be rhetoric. It's like giving birth. When you do that thing, it's like giving birth, and it's a wonderful experience. To have people meeting each other and listening to each other.
Well, listen, thank you for sharing yourself. It's been a real pleasure to listen to you. Best of luck in all your future endeavors.
So thank you very much. I'm going to be on the video file, and
very good. So I'll be speaking with Ricky Cavallero, who is, now what are you now?
unemployed.
Unemployed, but still loving parties. Thanks so much.
Books.
Thank you.
Grazie.